Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Next Take podcast. And it's just me today with a guest named John. John, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. I'm John Brassard Jr. I'm a podcaster in the United States.
Yes. So, yeah, Mikel is not with us on this one. This is a special episode. We're going to be having a little bit of fun talking paranormal. So, before we do kind of get into the meat of our episode, I am going to take it over to John to kind of just talk about the places maybe he's been in the States. Um, so you want to jump into your experiences where you've been?
Yeah, I've always kind of had an interest in the paranormal, and I'm not a ghost hunter by any stretch of the imagination. I know it's kind of a popular pastime the last 20, 30 years or so,
Yeah.
but it's never been anything that I've really actively pursued. I've been to haunted places, not necessarily because they're haunted, but just because it's a side effect of where they're at. I'm a historian, and so a lot of historical places are rumored to be haunted,
Right.
some of which are more valid than others, to be perfectly honest. But there's been a few places that I went that, I can't really say that I've had anything personal strange happen to me when I'm going. You know what? As I'm saying that, I'm taking that back. So a few years ago, I went, me and a friend of mine went on a ghost hunt at this place in Illinois, central United States, right off the Mississippi River. As a matter of fact, it's on a place called Arsenal Island, which is in the middle of the Mississippi River. It just happens to be more on the Illinois side. And it's a government installation. And the superintendent of the facility used to live in a home called Quarters One, and Quarters One was where they stayed. It's the second largest government owned private residence next to the White House. The place is huge. It goes on forever. It was built at the end of the 1860s, and it's massive. I mean, they just tacked all kinds of stuff onto it. I had a tour probably about 10 years ago where they actually gave us a complete tour through the basement, through the attic, through everything. And it probably took an hour and a half to go through everything. I mean, it is just sprawling. And
Yeah.
people have had stories come out of Quarters One for decades. I mean, and these aren't people that are prone to ghost stories or seeking this kind of attention. These are generals, they're army officers, they're all kinds of people, all kinds of walks of life have talked about this. And so we go on this ghost hunt over there. And I personally believe the place is haunted. I've talked to enough people where they've had personal experiences over there where it's, yeah, okay, I can believe there's something going on. However, I wasn't walking into it looking for anything. I wasn't looking to meet the ghosts or have any experiences with the great beyond. I know it's a ghost hunt, but I'd never been on one and I was curious. And so we go through and I was standing next to this room and they're saying that they're kind of egging me on, the people that are hosting this event, and they're saying that, well, I'm not sure if I would stand there because, there's this entity that allegedly lives in this room that doesn't like people. And I'm just, okay, sure.
Right.
And we're standing in the dark. And so I'm in this basement. I'm in the dark. We're in a vague circle. The premise is that they had these flashlights, and I don't know exactly how they make this work. I don't know what exactly. I'm skeptical, but be that as it may, the whole gimmick was that they put a flashlight on the ground, they ask the spirit questions, any spirit that may be present, and they're yes and no.
Right.
And if it's yes, then they blink the flashlight once. If it's no, they blink it twice. And occasionally the flashlight would just spaz out and it would just blink rapidly on and off. Like, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Like they're talking to a little kid. And I'm I'm just kind of watching this. It's like, okay, this is different. And I'm standing next to this door, and, they're telling me that, hey, you're a brave guy, whatever. And I'm just, okay, sure I am. I have no idea. Maybe I am, maybe I'm not. And my left arm started going numb. I mean, it felt really, really cold, and it wasn't really cold out. It was summer, and
Right.
it wasn't sweltering in the house, but it was warm, cold, and it felt like I was standing next to an air conditioning vent. And it was really bizarre. And so I'm standing there, and they're asking the questions, and it's old limestone walls, and I'm feeling the walls. And my friend's standing next to me, and she's, kind of looking at me, what are you doing? Because I'm really trying to see, maybe the stone got cold because it's a basement, it's underground, it's
Right.
going to be a little colder. And nothing. It's all warm. And I asked them about it later, the people who hosted the event, and they said that, well, that's probably the spirit that was drawing energy from you, or it was standing next to you, and so it could manifest some kind of phenomenon. And I'm,
Like
well,
that.
I don't know what it was, but it was certainly bizarre. It was different. I can't explain it. And they're doing these spirit box sessions. And for those of you that don't know, a spirit box is, it basically switches between random radio stations very quickly.
Mhm.
And any word that comes through, the spirits that are present can allegedly use them to communicate with the people present.
Right.
And I'll be honest with you, I'm a little skeptical of the spirit boxes too.
Mhm.
But as we're going through, and I'm experiencing this thing with my arm, and they're going through the spirit box session, and it's flipping through, and all of a sudden I hear this name very, very clearly come out of it, Johnny. I
Oh,
tell you, when something calls your name, even if it's a complete random happenstance, you're standing in the dark, you're trying to have this, figure out what's going on with your arm, and then all of a sudden something calls your name. I tell you, that is an attention getter. That was, and it was uncomfortable, and I didn't know what to think of it. And, but it was a bizarre experience. It was interesting. We had a good time. It was a night. They were nice people, and we had a nice night, and it was all that. But I mean, it was
still.
bizarre. I'd never sought that out before.
Yeah. It is kind of, and that's the thing. Like, when this kind of happens, you're just like, okay, all right, something's going on here. I mean, I do believe in like the afterlife in the sense of you know, maybe they're stuck or
Right.
whatever. I do believe in that. And kind of just to kind of go quickly through my experiences, I've been to, so this, the Carleton County Jail, for those Canadians who know, it's in Ottawa. It's no longer a jail. It's been turned into a hostel, but it was a jail back in the 1800s. I'm not sure if in the early 1900s too, but I went there as a child when we would have our graduation trips in elementary school. So I was about 13, almost 14 when we went there, and we were doing a ghost tour, and I hated every minute of it. I hated it. I did not want to be there. I was still the kind of person who just stayed away from anything horror, or I mean, I still don't do good with ghosts and that kind of thing. Like I can't handle it, just I can't do it. But I'm like, I hate this. I don't want to do this. Like I don't want to be here. And they would talk about how people were throwing themselves down staircases because it was horrible. Um,
Oh my.
Conditions in this prison, just horrible. They would say that if you go into the parking lot, that's where the bodies of the people that they killed, like, because when we have capital murder here,
Mm.
capital murder cases, we don't have that. We don't have the death penalty in Canada anymore. But they said they would bury the bodies and they're under the parking lot. And I'm like, what the heck? And there was one person apparently who, after they sent him to the gallows, they found out he was innocent. And you're like, oh, that's great. And if you look at his picture, his eyes move. And I did that. And his eyes didn't move. And I'm like, I gotta go. And um, there was also another instance, like when we were still on the trip, where for some reason it was very weird. It was after we went to the hotel. this hostel, something in the bus like opened up and was like, it was very weird. And no one is near the front of this bus that should have happened. And we're like, oh, it's that guy who probably followed us from this trail. And we're like, oh, I really gotta go. Um, I also went to Casa Loma, which is the only quote unquote castle we have here in Toronto, probably in the whole country, honestly. But it was built in the early 1900s. Um, it was these people's homes. They didn't live in it for very long, but they they did die, and I didn't know this until after I went to Casa Loma that apparently the ghosts of these people still live in the house. And you're like, oh,
Oh,
great. I didn't feel anything wrong with throughout the house. It's beautiful grounds. Didn't feel anything until we went into the basement. So now there's like a tunnel that leads from the house to these horse stables that there are no horses in anymore, but there used to be. And we went into this tunnel. And my mom was having a panic attack. She does not like being in tight places. Me and my brother are like, we're good. And but then we get to this weird part of the tunnel that just on either side of it just stretches to the imagination. You can't really, and it's dark. So you can't even really see how far it goes. And there was this guy there that's like, I'm taking a picture of this, and there's like a glow, this white ball in the picture. And I did it. I didn't take a picture, and I'm so mad at myself because I thought I did, but I didn't take a picture, but I used my phone and I could see it. And I'm like, oh, so apparently there is a ghost of the person who used to work in the stables. He's stuck in the tunnels of this place. And I'm like, so I just saw a ghost and it didn't do anything. It just stayed far away, this glowing light, but it was very weird. But apparently, like, there are people who say, like, if you go into the mistresses, I think that's what they call her, but she was the wife of this guy. If you go into her bathroom, if you look into her mirror, kind of like a Bloody Mary situation, you'll see her. And but I didn't see anything like that. Um, my only other experience, and this is more my family home, not my family home, my great grandparents when they were still alive. I was fortunate to know them for a short period of my life, but still did. And their house was haunted. I I'm sorry. Their house was haunted. My mom has stories of when she would sleep over. She wouldn't sleep because in the room that she would sleep in, and if you went into that room, you felt something's wrong. Something's going on in that room. And she would like, I swear, like there was something in there and she wouldn't sleep. The basement, forget it. I wouldn't go into the basement. You couldn't pay me enough to go into the basement. There was something wrong in there. Unless there was other people in the basement, then I felt safe. But there was one time my grandma, my great grandma's daughter, would she would say to me, go down to the basement and get me something. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what you want? And I was my great grandma died because they sold the house after she died. My great grandpa lived maybe about a year and a half after her. I would have been like 10 or 11 because my great grandma died when I was just shy of my 12th birthday. So I'm like, you want me to go down to the basement? I don't like the basement. It just, I don't know if they were on a burial ground or something. I don't know, but something went wrong in that house. And now I always say I feel bad for whoever's living in that house because my great grandma's probably haunting it. Guaranteed. She didn't like people in her house. There was I think a nurse who thought she saw her after she passed away when my great grandpa was still in the house. And I'm like, she's still in there. She's still in there. Sorry for whoever is living in it now, but I promise she won't hurt you. Anyway, but yeah, so that's definitely interesting. I mean, I'm the kind of person who's scared of being in places that are quote unquote haunted, but at the same time, it's that curiosity because I want to like, is something gonna happen? Like I'm fascinated with like the Lizzie Borden house, and I'm like, I want to go. I want to know like what people are feeling, if anything. And I am fascinated by certain things. Anyway,
No,
so
I know exactly how you feel. I think that's part of the draw to some of these places, what they call dark tourism nowadays.
mhm,
They want to go to these places. They want to the it's kind of contributed to this kind of new agey out there mindset that places have a certain feel, they have a certain energy to them. I was in college and I went to a college in the central United States where I'm at, and it was a public university, and there was a building on the campus called Sloss House. It was an old, I can't remember, it was a caretaker or what it was back originally, but it was an old farmhouse, basically. It was right off Central Campus, and I used to work campus security, and we were required to go in there and do rounds, and I hated going in there. It always felt unfriendly. It always felt welcome. And I thought it was my imagination because this is in the overnight. It's 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning when I'm going through, and I'm thinking, I'm just scaring myself. What is my problem? But I couldn't shake this feeling. And I'd been working there for months by this point, and every time I went in, same exact feeling. And I was talking to a friend of mine who also worked out there. And point in fact with this place is that it also served as a battered woman shelter. So any woman that had had a bad relationship, they were escaping from an abusive boyfriend or husband or whatever it may be, they would come and stay there, and then they would take them to someplace safe while they figured things out.
mhm,
And my friend, and as a matter of fact, we went in there one night doing rounds, and there was somebody staying there, and they would stay in the upstairs part apparently. And when you came through the door, the stairs were right there, and the front and the upstairs door opens, and there's a light on inside. And we're very surprised because it's like 1 o'clock in the morning, and no one's supposed to be in there. And of course, they don't tell us that people are there.
right,
And this guy standing there, and there's this woman who's looking very nervous, standing right behind her or him, and he's like, oh, who is it? Campus security. We're just doing our rounds. Oh, okay. And it was all friendly after that. But, that's how I knew that, yeah, it was for sure being used actively in that capacity. But my friend and I were talking about it, and he said, oh, yeah, I feel like that all the time. And he says, it's the energy of the place. You have all these women in there, and they're abused by men.
right,
And they get to the point they hate men. They're distrustful of men. And so we come in there as men, and that energy stays in there. And I never thought about it that way because it wasn't a supernatural thing. It wasn't anything like that. It was in a more practical method that made sense. And then you hear about hauntings of battlefields, hauntings of places where bad things happen, like you were talking with your experience.
mhm,
And these bad things happen there. An innocent man got executed. Yeah, that would leave some hard feelings for sure.
absolutely.
And and so you have these feelings that linger, and you can pick up on that sometimes. I think that they always say, well, mediums can pick up on that. Well, maybe they're more attuned to that, like somebody with a keener sense of vision or a stronger sense of smell or something. But I think everybody can kind of pick up on that. Like you could pick up when somebody's angry, like, boy,
Yeah,
I need to stop talking to this guy. They're pretty unhappy with me right now. I think everybody can pick up on that to a certain degree. And I think that these hauntings, I think sometimes when you go into the places like that, you can pick up on whatever happened there.
yeah, yeah. That's very true. Because that's the thing. Like energy is, it's a real thing, and that's a good point. Like you don't necessarily think about it, but it's a good point that if you, because I mean, if I have ever gone through something that some of those women went through, yeah, I'm gonna hate men. Yeah, I'm
Well,
gonna,
yeah,
you
exactly.
know, and that is gonna leave an energy in the place because here are women who are hating the hand that they were dealt and also hating men,
Right.
understandably.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I went to a place. There's some places out where I'm at. There's a place I'm in the state of Iowa. Once again,
Okay.
central United States.
Hmm.
We're about as central as you can get. And in the southwest portion of the state, there's a town called Villisca,
Yeah.
and there's a house there. It's nationally famous now for being haunted. It's called the Villisca Axe Murder House. The
Oh my
reason it's
gosh,
called
yes. Yes.
so I happen so my dad's family is from that area. Years and years ago, we had an uncle that lived down there. Never knew him, never met him, not important. But we would go on family history trips down there because he was real big into it. He would take me down with him and we'd go explore all these back roads and dirt roads and things. One of the few parts of the state that still has dirt roads. It was kind of a trip. But anyway, we would go around, and the Villisca Axe Murder House had just started hitting its stride. It hadn't become what it is now,
Yeah.
but it was starting on its way. And we went down there when it was still, should I say, fairly manageable to get in there. I went there a few years ago, and the place was packed. It is not a very big house, but the place it was just packed. I mean, I figured there was probably 50 to 100 people in that thing, and looked like an anthill. It was crazy. Now, that led into different experiences, but the story, for those that don't know, is that in 1912 there was an unsolved murder in the house. 2 adults, 6 children were murdered in the house as they slept with an axe. And probably Iowa's most famous unsolved murder.
Yeah.
And allegedly, the place is haunted, and it's been in all these big shows, Ghost Hunters and Ghost Adventures, you name it. Everybody's probably been to the Villisca Axe Murder House. And because we were down in that part of the Iowa anyway, so my dad and I went down there, and I've been down there, I don't know, 4 or 5 times over the years. And I went there one time, and we hit it just right. And there were only maybe 2 or 3 other people there. And there were 2 people in the house. My dad didn't want to go through it again. He was talking to one of the people that ran the place, and they were having a great conversation. And they're very friendly down there, very accommodating. But he said, well, why don't you go ahead and go through? Well, yeah, okay, cool. And at that time, I'd never been in the house. I'd been on the property, but I'd never been in the house. So I go in there, and the 2 other people that were there, they were at the tail end of their visit, and so they left. And I was in the house for about 20 or 30 minutes by myself. Now,
Ooh.
I didn't feel anything. I didn't experience anything. And I knew the details of what happened there in 1912.
Yeah.
And I knew what I was looking for and what had happened where and all these details. And I felt nothing. I didn't feel anything, didn't sense anything. It was just, oh, okay. And I got to explore the house, and I got to look through every nook and cranny and do that. And it was, it was a very great experience. Now, I talked to a friend of mine who went on a ghost hunt there. You can rent the house out for, I can't remember, so much money. They're booked over a year in advance to get in, and you can spend the night in the house. You got to bring sleeping bags or whatever.
No, thank you.
Only during I'm kind of the same way. But they went down there, and he said they all left. The people he went with, they all left at one point in the evening, and he was there by himself. And he's a big, tough guy. And I started feeling real uncomfortable, and I could not stand being in the place. I couldn't stand it. And he left, and then he's out there mentally chastising himself. Well, what are you doing? You're just freaking yourself out. You need to knock this off. You're going back in there. And so he goes back in, and he felt the same way, and he left, and he stayed out. It's like, I'm not going in there by myself again. Something in there doesn't like me. Now, what the differences were, I don't know, but obviously he had an experience that I didn't. So, I mean, maybe he was picking up on something. Now,
I have a question for you. Did you go during the day?
I went during the day. Now,
I do wonder if that's a reason that maybe your brother felt something.
See, I've wondered that myself, but at the same time, I don't think that with hauntings, it really matters.
Maybe.
Sometimes it does. Sometimes I think it's conditional on time, but I think a lot of times, like the Villisca Murder House, it doesn't. So
yeah,
my one story, because I was kind of like, and I'm skeptical. I'm a believer. I believe the phenomenon exists. I believe in ghosts. I believe in the afterlife. But I don't believe every story that comes my way. I've
Right.
heard some pretty outrageous stuff. It's like, I'm sorry, I just can't buy that. No, be that as it may, not to sound disrespectful to anyone, but uh, there was one story. Came from my dad, and he went out there at the time. He went out there during the day, and at the time he was big into taking panoramic pictures. And the way you take a panoramic picture, for those that don't know, is that it's a computer program, and you take a series of photographs, and you stand in one point in a given location, and you turn in a circle, and you overlap the frame of each photo with the last one, and then you put it in this program, and it makes it into one seamless image. And so you can turn through the room, and it's like you're standing there, or the
Right.
battlefield, or whatever. I've seen him do it with all kinds of things. And he was
Hmm.
really big into this at the time. So he went down to Villisca to do just that. And he gets back and he calls me. He's like, "You got to come over. I got to show you something." And I'm like, "Okay." And he kind of caught me in the middle of something, so I wasn't real happy. But I come over there, and I'm being a little short, and I'm being slightly grumpy. And I'm like, "Okay, what do you got?" And he's explaining this whole thing. He went down there, take panoramic picture. Okay. And he started in the living room, and he was in the house by himself. Now, one of the things with Villisca is that there were little kids that were murdered in the house. And what people
Hmm.
contend is that the spirits of the little kids are still there. And if you roll a playground ball across the floor, they'll roll it back to you.
Right. Right.
Now, I'm skeptical of that claim because old houses settle. The house is well over 100 years old, and there are no even floors in that place.
Hmm.
And I've been in old houses. I grew up in an old house, and you roll the ball across the floor, and it just rolls because it's got a slanted floor.
Hmm.
Now, so what they did is that they put playground balls all through the house. As a matter of fact, you kind of had to watch your step to make sure you didn't kick it through a window or something because you weren't paying attention. And there's this big green ball, like an oversized green ball, sitting by this chair. And he uses this chair as point of reference for his start point in the living room. And he's explaining all this to me. And he says, "Okay, here's the first picture." Like, okay. And he's like, "See the ball?" I'm like, "Yeah, I see the ball. It's right by the chair." Okay. And so he goes through the pictures, and he's click, 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 click. And he gets to the last one. "Do you see it?" And I'm looking, and I don't see it, in point of fact. And I have no clue what he's talking about. He said, "Look at the ball." The ball is in the chair, not next to the chair. It is in the chair. So the ball has raised off the ground and is now sitting in the chair. So this is probably about 2-3 feet. It has to come up 2-3 feet to be set down and clear the chair arm. And I'm looking at it, and my brain is just, I mean, that flywheel is just spinning. And the gears start stripping because I realize what I'm seeing, but I won't accept it. And I just ask him, "Do it again." Okay. And he clicks through the pictures, comes back to the first one. The ball is still starts on the floor. And in the span, and I've taken these pictures with him and for him, and it only takes maybe 30 seconds to turn in a circle. If you're being really ultra careful, you're in a place by yourself. You're in a room that shakes when you walk across it. You're going to know if somebody else is there.
Hmm.
He's by himself, and the ball went from the floor into the chair.
Like someone
I
picked up the ball and then
Yep,
like sat in the chair with the ball.
exactly.
Oh my God.
Exactly. I can't explain that one. That's one of the weirdest things I've ever seen, and I still can't explain that. I have no rational explanation for that at all. I can't figure it out.
Ah, man, that's yeah, I got goosies thinking about that. But like I do think just kind of go back a little bit to what you said about like your experience going through the house and not feeling anything and your brother's going through the experience through the house and feeling something. I do wonder if it's not so much necessarily a haunting, but more like kind of lending back to the energy. Because for those who don't know the story, the murders happened at night. So I do wonder if it was more about just that feeling of
Right.
it happening because it happened at nighttime. Again, if you don't know the story and you are interested in hearing, there are so many podcasters that have covered this, like Morbid, and that's why we drink. Like they've covered this in length. I think Morbid is actually really well done. If you want to go back and find it and listen to it, it's a very crazy story. Um, and yeah, so yeah, I do think it's maybe could have been something more like that. But yeah, it is frustrating that the case was also never solved. Just kind of going to the true crime sense of it, it was never solved. There are a bunch of theories as to who could have done it, but never solved. But yeah, that's a place that even though I do have the curiosity, I don't know if I could do it just because there was kids involved
Right.
in the murder aspect of it, because it was just like these were kids. These were not just the kids who lived in the home. There was friends that slept over, or I don't know if it was other
Right.
family members who slept over, but who are also murdered. There is something going on with one of the kids, one of the girls in there that they don't know exactly what happened, but I won't go into details with that. But let's just say it involves bacon fat. So it's very disturbing and we don't know exactly what happened, but um, I think when it involves kids, I can't do it.
Right.
So that's
Right.
kind of like, you know, the list murders, same thing. I could never do that because it involves kids too. And it's just, anyway.
Completely understandable.
Yeah, ugh. But anyway. So some of the Canadian places, I know you haven't, have you been to Canada
I
by any
have
chance?
not.
You have
I've been
not.
close, but I haven't been across the border.
Yeah, so um I mean we have apparently, I didn't know we had so many places, but we have many places here in Canada that are haunted. So we're just gonna have like a little conversation about that. And um I mean some of the places I haven't been either. Unfortunately none of the places I mentioned on this list, but um, we'll just have a little conversation about it and see what
All
we
right.
think. Yeah.
Sure.
So we have the Fairmont Banff Springs Hotel. Now, this is in Banff, Alberta. And apparently, the Fairmont Banff Springs Hotel, it's a luxury hotel in Banff. Sir William Cornelius Van Horn dreamed of sharing this beauty with the Canadian Rocky Mountains. So I think he was involved in the building of this hotel. Um, so it was built in 1888 and opened in 1888. So there are reports of multiple ghosts within the hotel. The hotel is roughly 133 years old. The most famous one is The Bride. I think there's nowhere you can go in terms of like a hotel or something like that where there isn't like a bride
I
or
was
a
just
white
thinking that.
lady or a gray lady. You know, there's always a bride. But the story with this bride, it started in the 1920s after a regrettable event on a young couple's wedding day. So, in her full wedding gown, a young bride was startled by something on the Fairmont's marble steps, causing her to trip and fall to her death. Now, that is horrible, if true. In the decades since, guests of the hotel have reported seeing a veiled figure creeping down the steps, retreading the fatal steps that caused her to miss her wedding day. History enthusiasts and paranormal enthusiasts alike will love potentially going here. So, like I've said, there's always a bride. And I mean, I'm not necessarily debating whether or not a bride potentially could have died on her wedding day by being startled on something by something. I just don't know if she's still haunting the place after the fact, and why would she necessarily do that? unless she's pissed off at the hotel, like you did this to me.
I was listening to the story, and out of so many of these bride stories, you always hear they were abandoned at the altar by their spouse, and so they go up and they hang themselves or shoot themselves or do whatever. It's always some kind of horrible method of death.
Yeah.
And this one is this, everything's going according to plan. And this poor woman, she's walking down the stairs. She trips over a wedding gown or something. And she falls down and dies. I'd be pretty pissed off about that. I mean, that could last a couple decades for sure. I mean, could you imagine? And I'm thinking, it's like, this is the kind of stuff that sounds real, because the more sensational stories, and don't get me wrong, sometimes they're completely real, and sometimes they're sensationalized. There was one case, it was connected to a family annihilation murder, and the wife had killed all five of their children, and then she had committed suicide, and unfortunately, her husband allegedly committed suicide shortly after, and it was completely understandable. Okay, yeah, it's just this horrible, tragic story until you read the article, and the contemporary articles, were saying that he put a noose around his neck and stood on a chair and shot himself and hung himself at the same time, just in case he missed one. Well, and and there was the thing, and you start getting into the practical mechanics of it. It's like, can you even do this? Would this work the way you wanted? I mean, how does this work? Well, it turns out that it was completely made up. The guy died like 20 years later, remarried 10 years later, and it was still this tragic event, but he moved on. And if he would have, sometimes it's not good enough that they just, unfortunately, they took their own lives. Yeah, I mean, they can't just take their own lives. They can't just, have something go away or do whatever. It always has to be something grand. And I understand it sells papers, but this gal, I'm listening to it. It's, you tripped and you fell downstairs. Yeah, that sounds about right.
And I mean, if you look at this place too, like it's high up, so they probably have quite a bit of stairs.
Oh, I bet.
And if you're like me, I'm scared of stairs. I'm scared I'm going to fall downstairs. I have this weird, fixation of potentially falling downstairs. Maybe because I actually did fall down my stairs in high school.
Oh.
But, yeah. I don't know what happened. I was going downstairs. I think I was wearing tights, and I went to a Catholic school, so I was in uniform. I was probably wearing tights. And I just fell down the stairs, and I'm like, what happened? I don't know what happened. I just slipped. But anyways, so maybe that's where the fear comes in. But I imagine, if you're being careful, you're in it's probably this big gown, and you're just trying to make sure you're not going to miss a step. And then you miss a step, and then you go tumbling down said steps, and they're probably hard. And yeah, I'd be pissed too. I'd be real pissed.
The worst part of it is they say that there's that old joke, and be careful what you wear, because if you die today, that's what you'll be wearing for all the rest of eternity. Could you imagine you're stuck in eternity wearing the dress that killed you?
Yeah.
So you're already pissed, and then you got this dress all over you. I wonder if you could trip in the afterlife too,
Oh man.
After about 20 years, she's just stomping up the stairs, causing this big ghostly phenomenon. Everybody's freaked out. She's just mad because what's it going to do? Kill me again?
Exactly. I mean, it's kind of like Beetlejuice, right? When they died in the thing that they were wearing.
Exactly.
So, and apparently you also potentially live out the rest of your days in death the way you died. But they couldn't do it in the movie because they would have been really cold because they drowned.
Right.
So, yeah, but, that's the other thing too. Oh, man, poor thing. I would also haunt the place because, revenge.
Well, absolutely.
So the second place, Charlotte County Courthouse, which is in St. Andrews, New Brunswick. So visitors can find the historical site of the Charlotte County Courthouse in the town of St. Andrews. The courthouse was built by Thomas Berry between the years of 1839 and 1840, so roughly around there. The building is well maintained and is still used as a courthouse today. Supposedly, though, the courthouse is haunted by the spirits of prisoners that were executed on site. So very similarly to what I experienced at the Carlton County Jail, because they would do it there. We never went to the gallows, but you could see it outside the windows. So kind of the same feel. So the paranormal investigators have speculated that the executed convicts manifest themselves on the building's walls as cold spots. Interesting. And report that they feel as if they are constantly being watched. There has even been an eyewitness account of a specter that roams the courthouse carrying a rope. Now, would that be a prisoner or would that be like the executioner? Let's get this rope going,
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, if they're executing people on the spot, maybe I want somebody new, but I can't ever get anybody.
Exactly. We got rid of the death penalty, so they're just roaming around with this rope. No, we can't use it.
Man, and they have to carry it,
And they have to carry it.
Shades of Marley there.
I don't like it. So that's basically what you can see there. I mean, again, if I'm seeing this specter roaming around with a rope, I'm gone. I can't imagine the people who have to because I work in the legal industry, I'm a legal assistant. I can't imagine if my boss, I don't live in New Brunswick, but I can't imagine my boss having to go to court and then there's just this specter roaming around with this rope. Can you imagine?
Think of the alternative. I mean, I think I'd feel more comfortable with a ghost carrying around a rope. At least it's it's a ghost that carries around a rope, issues. But could you imagine just some weird guy wandering the courthouse with a rope, with a noose chasing people around?
Yeah,
I mean, that to me, that's much more terrifying.
Because humans, alive humans, are a lot scarier than any ghost that you could encounter.
That is no lie.
People scare me. Exactly. That's actually a very good point. I didn't think about it like that. So the next place is a place called the King's Playhouse, and this is in Georgetown, Prince Edward Island, or PEI. So King's Playhouse has been operating for over 130 years, and it apparently is bringing the exhilarating excitement of stage theater to Georgetown. So that's great. The Playhouse also hosts art galleries and can be rented out as a wedding venue. The Playhouse's auditorium can seat up to 280 patrons and hosts frequent onstage events, including the in-house produced at the Dog Lake turn of the road. Never heard of it. Don't know. Oh. But the building was constructed around 1880 and was allegedly built on a graveyard of sailors. So we see where this is headed.
Wow.
The ghost referred to as Captain George has haunted the Playhouse ever since. The original building was tragically burnt to the ground in a fire in 1983, but they rebuilt it. It's a replica of what it was the following year. However, the hauntings didn't stop with this new construction, with visitors frequently reporting chilling whispers down the hallways. There are even reports of the ghost captain grabbing theater goers' ankles. Sir, don't touch me. You can be there, just don't touch me.
Jeez.
Captain George has been described as a figure in a long coat who carried a lit lantern. I also don't like that either. Just something about lanterns that freaks me out. The King Playhouse staff have been good sports about the supposed hauntings and even have a front row seat reserved in the theater for the captain who's grabbing people's ankles. So if you ever want to go to there and have this captain grab your ankles, you can go. I won't be, but you can go.
That's, I know a lot of people that have gone out looking for ghosts, ghost hunting, the experience, but I gotta, I really got to avoid this one because I don't like the idea of having somebody grab my ankle. We're going, because I'm going to be the bride tripping down the stairs in this case, and then I'll be hanging out with the captain, this weird guy with a lantern with this ankle grab fetish for the rest of time. And now I'm going to be pretty pissed off. I'm going to avoid that place.
Yeah,
I
no.
can't handle that.
I mean, I heard PEI is beautiful. I'm going to avoid this place though. I'll go to
I
PEI,
can,
but I'm not going here.
I can drive by. Drive by
Yeah,
is fine.
yeah. But then what if he decides, like, he just sees you driving by, he knows you're avoiding him intentionally, and then he just leaves the place and then still finds a way to grab your ankles? I think I'm just going to avoid the area altogether.
Yeah, before you go, just make sure you know where this is at its map and go about a 10-mile radius around the outside, and we're good. We're
He'll
covered.
never get me. Yeah.
He'll never know. He'll
Oh,
never know.
oh, I don't like people. I don't like people touching me. So I really don't want ghosts touching me. They
Well,
don't.
yeah. I mean, especially, you look and there's nobody there, and I just assume that the weird thing grabbing my ankle, oh, that's just Captain George. He just does that. Where is that normal?
He really loves an ankle. He really loves an ankle. He's probably grabbing women's ankles too, which is just a whole other thing we don't need to talk about. But it's
Yeah. I mean, and what's the reward? I mean, could you imagine that conversation? If you let me grab your ankle, I'll let you hold my lantern. I mean, come
ew.
on. There is nothing. Let
The
Captain
whole-
George grab your ankle. You want to hold Captain George's lantern? It's going to be a good time.
Ew. Oh.
Yeah, this is the eternal version of the skeezy guy at the club, It's like he is just no.
He's an absolute no for me. Thank you. It's a no for me, dog. No.
Yeah. This guy's
So,
off the list. He's done.
no. Mm-mm. So St. Louis ghost trains is a little different. And this can be seen in St. Louis or Louis, whatever, Saskatchewan. So found in the village of St. Louis or Louis, which is about a 40-minute drive away from the town of Brassard, the St. Louis ghost train haunts the locals there. The legend of the ghost train dates back to the 1920s. The story goes like this. A railway conductor was inspecting the tracks at night. I think we can also see where this one's headed. Still, in an unfortunate accident, he had his head cut clean off by an oncoming train.
Ow.
Horrific. Ow.
Okay.
So,
Go ahead, continue.
Can
Don't mind my weird interruption.
you imagine that that's what happened and the ghost is like, ow,
Yeah.
my head. While railroad tracks have long since been removed, locals still claim to see an ominous white light moving along where the tracks used to be. Visitors can experience this phenomenon. I don't know why you'd want to, but you can for themselves by heading to St. Louis across the river where the train tracks used to be. Again, don't know why you'd want to do that, but this is the thing. Okay, so in this case, it's not just like the ghosts themselves. It's a ghost train. It's worse. For some reason, that's worse. Personally,
I don't know.
for me.
I could go for a ghost train. I mean,
I don't
I'm
know.
not. If I'm on the ghost train, I'm not on it. But I'm not cool with that. But I mean, just going and seeing a ghost train, like, oh wow, that's kind of cool. Kind of passes through. It's like seeing a comet in the sky. It's not going to bug me. It's just there. It's like a natural phenomenon. Look, that's cool. I saw a ghost train, and then I moved on with my day. It's not trying to grab my ankle for crying out loud. I don't feel like I have to go out of my way to avoid it.
For me, I feel like so. I have questions. Is this train just driving by and minding its own business, or is it reenacting this poor conductor's death? Because that I can miss that personally. I don't need to see
That's
this man's
fair.
his head go clean off, and then
Could
he
you
says,
imagine? I
"Ow."
mean, and you don't see the other side of it because it's one ghost train. It's not the other ghost train. It's not the kill train, so to speak. It's just this
What if
ghost
it is
train.
the
So you
kill
see this
train?
nice conductor leaning out the window, waving, like, "Hi, how you doing?" And then his head just falls off. I mean, that's going to leave some trauma in my life.
That's it. He's like a nearly headless Nick. He could have
Yeah,
his head, and then all of a sudden his head just starts to fall off.
yeah. Okay, yeah, you make a point there. I'm not down with that. If it's just the ghost train by itself, just going through, mine is conductor. If
Yeah,
he's headless inside, okay, well, yeah, I saw a headless guy. I guess it goes with the ghost train. I mean, this is kind of matching up here. But I mean, if I see it, I'm
I'm
not
not
so good
about
with
it.
that one.
Not about it. I don't want to witness someone's death like literally 100 years later by seeing this ghost train continuously keep going and chopping this guy's head off. Lord, this is why you're told, everybody here in Toronto, to not cross the tracks at Union Station. This is why. You too might get your head cut off. Um, so another place, West Point Lighthouse. Again, something about lighthouses. But anyways,
Lighthouses are creepy.
yeah,
I'm with you on that one.
I
That
don't
is
like a lighthouse. But this is also in PEI, but instead this is in O'Leary. So West Point Lighthouse is also infamously haunted and even made the Reader's Digest 10 most haunted Canada places list. Hate it. Not going there if that's the case. Allegedly, the original lighthouse keeper, whose name was William Anderson MacDonald, has come back from beyond the land of the living to ensure the light is being adequately taken care of. So, also, that's the other thing too. You die, but then you still feel the need to do your job.
I've never been attached to any job that I've done. I've liked a lot of the jobs I've done in my life, but I've never felt so attached to any of them that I want to come back from beyond the dead and
Yeah,
keep it up. Especially
yeah,
lighthouse keeper. That's kind of you gotta like that job anyway.
that's true. Like for me, I love my job, but I don't want to come back from the dead to do dictations or draft letters or anything like that. Like I don't love my job
Yeah.
that much.
Draft this letter for all time. Like, no, I'm
Forever.
not doing that.
I'm gonna
There's a
constantly
retirement
do
age for
motion
me.
records for the rest of my life.
Oh,
That sounds like hell, actually.
yeah, no kidding. We're walking a fine line here.
That's a hell loop. So back in the 1980s, the lighthouse was converted into an inn. Why? By a dedicated group of volunteers. Okay. The volunteers witnessed strange things, such as one volunteer claiming to have turned off the lights in the lighthouse, only to step outside and see them flicked back on. Can you imagine? I turned that light off. Now I'm gonna have to go back in there and turn it back off again, just for him to turn it back on.
Yeah,
The light is
no,
supposed to stay on. He says, like, come on,
if he wants it on, he can
leave,
keep it on. I'm okay.
leave.
First of all, I'm a volunteer. I'm not paying the light bill. And if they want it on, I'm not going back in there and arguing with something I can't see, because you know what it'll be? I'll have driven through that town with Captain George, and that's who it'll be, visiting his friend the lighthouse keeper. I'll get my ankles grabbed and I'll be holding a lantern before I know it. And there's stairs in there too for me to fall down. This is just not a win, so they can keep their lights. It's
There's a
all them.
theme. There's a theme going on here with the Canadian.
I'm thinking so. See, this is a voyage of discovery for both of us.
Yes. Oh man, no. But yeah, so I would leave it on. Another volunteer claims they thought they saw a bearded man sitting in the bedroom when the place was supposed to be empty. So here's this man just sitting in there. I was like, okay, so I will leave. You stay. I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna leave right now.
Yeah, my question is always, well, I like the stories where they disappear right away. It's like, oh, okay, I know that I saw something weird.
I'm
I
still
just
gonna
saw,
leave.
yeah, I saw a bearded guy. It's sitting in the room. Did you ask him, sir, it's closing time? And then he just sits and stares. It's like, yeah, now I'm going to leave. I'm going to call the cops. Johnny Law can come out and deal with this guy. I'm done. I'm not working with this. But I mean, just to stand there and was there like lots of prolonged awkward eye contact, between bearded guy and volunteer? I mean, how did that go?
That's the thing. I'm sorry, but if I have this thing staring at me, not saying anything to me, honestly, I'm not going to engage. That's worse.
Right.
Because then I engage, you're going to look at me and we're seeing each other. We're just staring at each other. We're not talking. I don't like it. And I
Yeah.
think there's actually been cases where like it looks like the ghost is actually trying to say something, but then
Oh,
nothing's coming out.
those are weird. Those
That's
wig me out.
we can swear on this podcast. That's fucked up.
Yes, it is.
Like, no. I'm like,
Yeah,
me, if I see you're trying to talk, but then nothing's coming out, I'll be like, it's been really nice not talking to you. I'm gonna leave
yeah, no
and
kidding.
leave you to it.
There was I always think of that. There was an old X-Files episode where the one character's father passes away suddenly, and then he appears to her in his living room, and he's just sitting there and he's mouthing words to her. And the way the actor portrayed it, and he was a really good actor, and he's just sitting there in this big armchair, and he's looking at her, and no expression on his face, and he's just talking to her, moving his lips very pronouncedly. And then she kind of, what are you doing here? Because it's like 2:00 in the morning, and she looks down, she looks back up. Yeah, and he's gone, because he's dead, and he's off wherever. And it's like, okay, ever since that, every time I think of that, I think of that one scene, and it freaked me out then. It freaks me out now. And I'm just, no, I am not. No, you're doing that. You keep doing that. Once again, this is what Johnny Law gets paid for. I'm calling the cops. They can come out. They can deal with that. That's why cops have cool ghost stories, because I am a civilian and I call them to go deal with weird things. Well, there's nobody there. That's good. That means I can leave, and are they waiting in the bushes for me to follow me home? This is a never-ending nightmare circle. I'm getting out of the ghost business now. This conversation has pretty much killed my whole ghost story bit. I am done.
There it is, folks. He's done. But it's true. Listen, I watched the rebooted quote unquote version of X-Files. It was still the same people, but the rebooted, because when it was on before, I was too young. I wasn't allowed to watch it. But honestly, I don't think I would have wanted to, because anytime I would hear the music, I'm like, peace. This was the music, just I'm out. As soon as I heard, I'm like, I'm out. Bye. You do it. I'm good.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That I can literally see the scene too in my head. When I didn't watch that episode, I'm seeing it, and I hate it. So, when they hit their stride, they really did it well, and that scene has stuck with me. It just, that bothers me. 20 plus years later, it's still there.
Yeah. And so many, I was talking to somebody about this kind of thing one time, and I told them, you hear these things. Well, I hear phantom footsteps, and I hear this, and it's easy to sit here. It's in the middle of the day. I'm sitting in my office. Everything is good. Everything is kosher and safe and sound. And and you're by yourself, and it sounds fine. It's like, well, it's just footsteps. They're not going to hurt you. No. When you're in a building by yourself, and so truth be told, I actually had this happen to me once. I was doing rounds when I was doing my campus security job. I was doing rounds in this one building, and I was in a section of hallway, and it went to either side, and then it moved. The hallway went north is basically what it did on either side. And there were these marble floors in there as it went through. It was probably with marble. It was probably some, kind of faux marble concrete or whatever. But anyway, it was a hard surface, and you could I distinctly heard footsteps coming down the far hallway toward me. And I'm standing there, and this is probably about 3:00 in the morning, because we were unlocking doors. And I'm just sitting there, and and I was in the building by myself, and this is a huge building, and it's part of a complex of buildings that went about almost a block long. And I knew I was in the building by myself, and I think it was a Saturday morning. So there could have been a grad student, could have been a professor, but more than likely not. And I'm standing there, and I'm thinking, oh, it's just somebody coming through. And I'm starting to really get bothered. And I'm being the stupid guy in the horror film, and I'm standing, I'm the stupid security guard that you're shouting at the screen, run, And I'm standing in the middle of this hallway and I'm thinking about this. It's like, no, it's just a student. It's just a grad student. It's just a professor. It's somebody normal. And I was it really
Somebody
bothered
normal.
me. And it wasn't like it was normal walking, like people just, walk, 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 walk.
Right.
I mean, it was really measured. It was like click, click, click,
No.
click, click. And there was something about it that seemed off, and I didn't like it. And it was about to come around the corner. This is how dumb I was. I wait until it's about to come around the corner, and then I'm like, nope. And I just left. I never looked back. And yeah, I have no idea what it was. Totally feasible. It was something completely normal. But when you're in that situation, you're in a place by yourself and you hear footsteps. It's like, that's not supposed to be there, especially in your house or in your place of business. A lighthouse is not, or any of these places, they're not necessarily really big. And when it's closing time. I mean, think of the businesses that you've been in, where you've been in when it's closed, or even when you're opening, you're there by yourself, or there's only one other person and they're across the room from you, and you hear footsteps. That doesn't belong. That is scary as hell.
It is scary. And this is the thing. So I just recently had surgery. Of course, the listeners already know this. About a month out now. And when I came home, and it was only day surgery, it wasn't a big deal. But when I came home and I'm getting ready for bed, I'm moving around, for the most part. But when I closed my door, and my mom's like, I really wish you would just leave the door open, because in case of anything, I can hear you. I won't be able to hear you. And I said, are you nuts? I'm not leaving my door open, because when I leave my door open, weird shit happens when I'm sleeping. And this is why I still cover up with my comforter in the heat of the summer, because I need to protect myself from the demons. Problem.
Exactly.
No way. And that's the thing. When my mom, when I was in late teens, and my mom would go to work, and I'd wake up and I would go back to bed after, I would leave my door open. But it was then that when I would leave my door open, that I would, you get that sense when you're aware, but you're still sleeping and you're trying to get yourself to wake up and you can't. That's what would happen. And I would have these weird moments that my mom is coming home, and I know that doesn't make sense. She's at work, but I can hear her. She's home and coming up the stairs, but she's not home. It's not her. And she's coming up the stairs, and it's right as this thing is about to come into my room with my door freaking open. This actually happened. That's when I woke up, and I look out the door, into the hallway of my door. There's nothing there, and it's not my mom. There's no one home. It's just me. And I'm like, it was from that point on, I never sleep with my door open. Are you crazy? No.
I don't blame you. I like to put, I figure the monster may be able to hammer down the door, but I'm going to at least make the cursory effort.
But do you notice that when they can't get through your closed door?
Yeah. I don't like sleeping with my door open. I don't like sleeping with my feet uncovered.
No. I have to be protected.
Yeah.
And my covers protect me, and my closed door protects me.
I have a vivid imagination, and I had a misspent youth watching horror films and reading horror novels. And then I'm a historian that's always had a taste for weird things. And so that didn't help any. And so I always have this image, even now, well into adulthood, of something, like the hand coming up from just over the bed and grabbing my feet. Here we go with Captain George again. But, it's his cousin, Captain Bill, who's grabbing my feet, and he likes guys' feet, and he likes my feet in particular, and he's been following me for several years now. And I got to wear the blanket so that Captain Bill can't feel my feet.
Exactly. Listen, I don't want to end up like Johnny Depp in A Nightmare on Elm Street being killed in my bed.
That's exactly right.
I haven't seen the movie. I want to see the movie fully, but I haven't seen the movie yet. I haven't gone to it. I went through the Halloween movies, which Michael Myers is my guy. I love him.
There you
Anyways,
go.
there it is. So I'm making my way to Nightmare on Elm Street, but I have seen that scene. I'm like, oh Jesus! Like, no,
I'm
that's what
much
I'm
more.
trying to avoid.
Yeah, exactly. I'm much more of a Michael Myers guy as opposed to. I always thought Freddy Krueger was just skeezy. I
He
it
is
just
skeezy.
I
He's
could
going to
never.
kids' dreams and killing them.
Yeah, I could never get into him. I'm a big Robert Englund fan, who's the actor who plays him. I
Uh-huh.
really like him, and he seems like such a nice guy.
He is a
And
nice guy.
I've heard he's a really nice guy. But I
Yeah,
mean, just that character, and I know it's the character in that. But I mean, watching the movies, no, I'm not digging this.
yeah. No, no. I absolutely love the Halloween movies. Like, I I've watched the original. I've watched. There's some in the middle that I haven't been able to get my hands on very easily, but
Oh, I
hopefully I
bet.
can. But I've seen like the 1990s one where he's like her brother all of a sudden.
Yeah.
I've seen the more recent ones. I mean, I think the more recent one, the 2020 something one, really wasn't that good, guys. But I've, I've, I've seen them all, and I love Michael Myers. He's a creep, but I love him.
Yes. Yeah, he is. I loved the 2018 version when they rebooted it. I
That
went
was
to
my
the
favorite one.
I loved that one. That one was really well done.
It was really good. And then the one that came after it wasn't so good. It didn't do
No.
good.
No, I was not a fan of that one, but
Mm-mm.
I grew up with John Carpenter, who was the guy that
Yeah,
he came up with it. And I
yeah.
grew up with him. My dad was a big fan. He had a thing for cult movies and he loved going to the theater.
Mm-hmm.
And so I loved horror movies and he didn't care what he went and saw.
Mm-hmm.
Judging from the amount of crap movies that I drug him to, but we would always go see John Carpenter films. And
Mm-hmm.
that was, I actually saw the second Halloween before I saw the first one. So the first one is my favorite,
Yeah.
followed by, and the second one is my second favorite just because the story's silly and there's a lot of silliness to it, but I love it because it was one of my first slasher films I ever saw.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just pure nostalgia and I still get into it.
That's the one I want to see. It's the second one. I haven't seen it yet.
Oh,
And I want to see it so bad
love
because I
that
love
one.
what the premise is. And I'm like, oh, I want to watch it. But for some reason, I couldn't get my hands on it. And I'm like, oh, I gotta get it. Because I think, unfortunately, I think the time that I'm also trying to get my hands on it, it's like everybody else is also trying to get their hands on it. So I think it just crashes everybody else trying to rent it or whatever. And
That's
I was,
awful.
yeah, I'm like, I want to watch this. And I love Jamie Lee Curtis. So I'm like, I want to watch it, but I can't get my hands on it.
It was I really enjoyed that movie. There was a lot of really cool stuff about it. I yeah, I can wax lyrical about the Halloween films. I think I've seen almost all of them in the theater. Not the first one. I'm not quite that old, but and the third one, the third one gets so much flack because it tanked so bad because it's not a great film, but it's not as bad as everybody said. When I was growing up, it has nothing to do with Michael Myers. Spoiler alert,
Oh,
nothing to do with Michael Myers, but it was a decent movie on its own for what it was, and it's silly. But I went back, I watched it when I was young, and I hated it. Oh my god, I hated that movie. And I watched it here maybe about a year ago, and it's like, that wasn't so bad. It's not as bad as I remember, and I kind of enjoy it now.
hmm. And it has nothing to do with, like, is he in it?
No, not even.
Then how can you call it a Halloween movie if he's not in
So
it?
the premise is that John Carpenter he was big into one and done. He wasn't a big sequel guy. And as far as he was concerned, after the first 1978 Halloween, the series was done. He wrote
Right.
his story, he did his presentation, he was done. But he was contractually obligated to do sequels. And the second one he did under duress. As a matter of fact, the reason why, and this very famously came out a few years ago, is that the reason Michael Myers was Laurie Strode, Jamie Lee Curtis's character's brother, was because him and his producer, Deborah Hill, they got drunk one night. It was the only way that he could gag his way through the script, and he's like, they could be brother and sister. Yeah, let's put that in. So yeah, he was drunk off his ass writing this. And that's where that came from, and everybody ran with it. Well, then by the third one it came in, he didn't have the rights to it, and he had nothing to do with the series, but they wanted to do. And one of the premises that came out is that it was going to be an anthology. It was just going to be all under the Halloween banner. So when it came out, it was Halloween 1, Halloween 2, which ended the Michael Myers series at that point. And then, of course, they resurrected him like 20 times. And then with the third one, it was supposed to be, well, it's an anthology. It's Season of the Witch. And so everybody was expecting Michael Myers, and they didn't get it, and they hated it, and it tanked. And really, it was no worse than so many other horrible 80s B movies out there. But it was... it was what it was. And then by the fourth one came through, it's like, yeah, we learned our lesson. We're going to put Michael back in this one. We don't care how ridiculous it is. But, if you watch the ending of the second one, it's like, yeah, okay, this is kind of silly, but I'll watch this. It's not a bad movie. I actually enjoyed the fourth one, but, not everybody did.
Yeah. Well, I'll still watch them, just to say I did. But I yeah, that's interesting, because I guess technically Halloween doesn't necessarily have to mean Michael Myers, but you expect Michael Myers because
it became synonymous with the series. It's what everybody wanted, and they never explained any of that. It wasn't like, hey, this is an anthology, we're doing this. No, they didn't explain it. You were just expected to swallow it. So you walked in Halloween 3. How did he get out of this one? And they got, what the hell is this?
He didn't even get in it to get out of it.
Yeah, because it was like witchcraft and robots and Celtic magic and all this other weird stuff. It's like, what?
Oh, that's disappointing.
It was. But if you walk into it with that premise of, oh, this isn't Michael Myers, it's like, oh, okay, this is just a bad B movie. I can dig this.
Okay, so let's go to the next place.
Okay.
Rose Deer Hotel, which is in Drumheller, Alberta. So in Drumheller, the community of Wayne is home to the Last Chance Saloon and the Rose Deer Hotel. So in 1912, when Wayne was in its prime, it had a population of only 2,000 people, but it was in its prime at some point, with a thriving coal mining industry. So back in the day, the saloon was nicknamed Bucket of Blood.
Okay.
I hate it. Why would you do that? But anyways, the reason they did that was because of the number of drunken fights that would break out at the establishment. Still don't like it though. After the Great Depression swept through the area, Wayne closed all its mines in 1932. However, despite all of this, the Last Chance Saloon and the Rose Deer Hotel remained open, and it is still open today. Supposedly back in the 1920s, many working miners supported the Communist Party, with many of the Ukrainian and Russian miners wanting to form a union. Allegedly, the coal mine owners were not in favor of this and brought in some KKK union busters. I hate that.
Lovely.
That's great, yeah. They did that to disrupt the unionization. So the Klan members beat up several union organizers, leaving 2 of them dead in a room on the 3rd floor of the Rose Deer Hotel. So the room's haunted reputation has only grown over the years. And if you want to potentially experience these 2 now dead men in this room, you can go and rent it out if you'd like. I personally will not, but you can if you want to. So yeah, so there's that.
Well, that's a hard pass on the Bucket of Blood.
No, I'm not going to a place called Bucket of Blood.
Yeah, no kidding. That's a place you go to on a dare, or you're drunk college kids and you wander in the wrong part of town. This is just not a great idea.
Let's go to Bucket of Blood. No, thank you.
Yeah, let's go hang out with the KKK ghosts. Really? No, I'm gonna take a hard pass on these guys.
First of all, the KKK ghosts are definitely not gonna like me, so I'm not gonna go. I'll stay clear of the KKK ghosts. Thank you. So the next place, this is French, so it's Baie des Chaleurs. I haven't done French since I was in grade nine. Yeah, grade nine. So
You're
sorry.
already doing better than me, so we're
There,
good.
well, it's worse for me because French is supposed to be the second language and everything, and you learn it in school and stuff. But then
Mm,
once you hit 14, you say, I don't have to do this anymore. You really don't have to do it anymore. And I lost all knowledge. It's gone.
it
Um,
makes sense.
yeah.
I'd be the same way.
But this is a phantom ship, and it's in Beresford, New Brunswick. So, legend has it that if you look towards the Chaleur Bay from the town of Beresford, you might be able to catch a glimpse of this phantom ship. The myth of the great ship dates to the 1500s. Whoa. The story goes that two Portuguese explorers lured the indigenous people that lived around Chaleur Bay onto their boat and intoxicated them with whiskey until they passed out. Okay. The
Lovely.
Oh, this gets worse. The captives were then chained below deck. Not the show, not that fun, and sailed back to Portugal, where they were sold as slaves. So you come onto my country, and then you take the people of said country and then enslave them. It's just this whole thing is gross. The way
Yeah, no kidding. These are, yeah, this is, no.
This is horrible. But wait, don't worry, there's more. The Portuguese were so pleased with themselves, great, with the profit that they received for their human cargo, hate that too, that they soon returned to get more. But this time, the indigenous people were ready for them and they were prepared because they knew what happened. They took revenge on the Portuguese people for kidnapping.
Sorry, my dogs are going nuts. Somebody
Oh,
came
I can't
home.
even hear anything.
Oh, okay, good. We're good. We're good.
Okay. So they took revenge on the Portuguese people, kidnapping their people, killing all of them.
Good
Now,
grief.
I don't know if I would go that route, but at the same time, I mean, I hate to say they deserved it, but when you're trying to go back and take more people as if we're just here for your, for you to take us and then sell us,
What? Yeah, that's, yeah.
Yeah. So 2 years later, a search party discovered the Baie de Chaleur, which is like the boat that is now you could potentially see. As the party boarded the ship, they were attacked by the Chaleur Bay indigenous people. So they too were attacked by these people. The Portuguese were determined not to lose a fight, so they set the ship ablaze, killing all but one indigenous survivor to tell the story.
Jeez.
Mm-hmm. However, hundreds of years later, some locals of Beresford still claim that they can see the giant ship burning out in the bay.
That, yeah, I could see that leave a
I can
mark.
see that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That's one of those
Believe
things, so many small towns like to talk about their history. It's one of those things they just don't mention it at all.
Mm-hmm.
We started in 1950, but it says here founded 1845. We started in 1950, and just leave it there.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I definitely think that there's definitely some credence to that. Like, I could see that definitely happening just because, the history of it. And I mean, I believe the history of it. We're talking this is the 1500s,
Oh, sure.
and this, people were not nice to others. And yeah, it was horrible.
Yeah, exactly.
All around, just death and then hauntings.
Yeah.
So, Fort George, which is in Niagara-on-the-Lake in Ontario, so near my neck of the woods. I haven't been here, but I don't know if I'm going to want to go there after I read this. So, the Fort George National Historic Site is a fort that was used to protect Upper Canada and the town of Niagara-on-the-Lake from American attacks during the War of 1812. So, this is the thing. I mean, America, you just got out of the Revolutionary War. Why'd you have to come and attack us? Like, just 20 years later. What did we do to you?
That seemed like the thing to do.
Right? Anyway. Guests can can explore 8 restored buildings, hear live military music, and witness live musket demonstrations. The fort is also a popular place to go on a guided ghost walk tour because of the fort's allegedly haunted status. Now, the historic site is supposedly home to many spirits of long dead soldiers. However, the most frequent paranormal sightings at the fort refer to a ghost girl named Sarah Ann. Not the Sarah Ann from Love is Blind, but different. She also has been sighted multiple times at the barracks stairs, often tapping Fort George employees on the shoulder before disappearing. I'm curious to know why she's here. Who was she? I don't know if we got those answers, but also,
sometimes
I think we get a clue. Maybe
the ghost stories out of context are the ones that always kind of bother me because I mean, it always makes me ask the question, is the whole thing made up, or is it we started having these phenomena? We started seeing this woman walk around. We started hearing footsteps. We started seeing whatever. And we had these experiences. And so some enterprising individual, some very confident in what they're saying person, I don't want to say they're a liar, but let's face it, they're a liar. They're just making stuff up as they're going along. And they say, oh, yeah, that's Sarah Ann. Well, where's Sarah Ann come from?
Yeah.
No one knows, but it's Sarah Ann.
Yeah, and that's a thing too, because we're going to kind of get a little history here on Sarah Ann. First of all, she's a child. She's a woman, a girl. Okay. And again, back in the 1812 days of war and stuff, women were fighting in wars. We'll kind of do this here first and talk about her and then make this make sense, because I'm like, why was she there? So basically, what they say is that Sarah died of disease while living in the fort at the age of 7. So she's living in the fort. She's 7. Why was she there? Because again, I would think the fort is meant for those people who are fighting in said war. She's 7. She wasn't fighting in the war or providing aid to the people fighting in the war.
All right. I mean, if it was a full-grown woman, even a teenager, you could say she was working in the kitchen. She was visiting her dad.
She's 7.
Yeah. What's a 7-year-old doing at a... Why? Commandant's daughter? That doesn't even quite make sense. I mean, because you're on the war front, so why would you put your kids there?
Yeah. And again, for those who live in Ontario who understand, this isn't the only fort we had. We also had other forts. I've been to the one in Toronto, which I can't remember the name of now, and I've also been to the one that's in Kingston. But this one I haven't been in. And this is the one that's in Toronto and the one that's in Niagara on the lake. They're the ones that are closest to the lake. So they're going to be the more dangerous hotspots, if you get my drift. Why is a 7-year-old in the hotspot? Like Kingston isn't near, I don't think it's as close. You can't see any water nearby like as you can with the other two, I would imagine. And it's why was she there? I'm just very curious. Why?
One thing I heard he was actually did ghost tours down in Chicago for a long time, and he wrote a book and he was talking about the hauntings of Chicago, and he was talking about there always seems to be the ghost of a little girl. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't.
There's always a little girl.
Always and forever.
In a dress, in a wedding dress.
Yeah, I saw the ghost of a little girl. And what kills me is that it's just like what we were talking about. People look at it and, oh, this is supposed to make perfect sense. There's just a little girl there because, there was a higher child mortality rate. Well, yeah, there was. But why did this kid die here? Did she die nearby and decide, I want to go haunt a fort? That sounds fun. I'm going to do that for 100 years.
In the fort. Why was she living in the fort?
Exactly. Especially at that time. I mean, it's not like peacetime. They're expecting Americans to come piling up over the whatever at any minute. And yeah, we'll go ahead and put our kids there. That'll work.
Exactly.
Perfectly safe.
Exactly.
We're very confident in our ability that they won't come any closer.
I mean, we're peacemakers now, but back in the 1800s and and especially in the World War I too, we were not. So,
Right.
you know, why was she there? But anyway, she was there. This is the story we're going to lead with, and she continues to still be there because she can be seen at the stairs, continuing her childish games from beyond the grave. So, yeah.
Yeah, once again, I don't get it. You know, when we were talking about Veluska, that made sense. Why is there little kid ghosts there? Well,
Because there
because they
was
died.
kids there, right?
Yeah, exactly. This makes sense.
They were in a home, not a fort.
Yeah, this doesn't, and so many don't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
It's like there's no record of any kids, and I've even seen this challenge come out multiple times where, historically speaking, there's no kids present in the history of this home. We have no idea why people are seeing the ghost of a little girl, but they claim to see the ghost of a little girl.
Yeah, but I would think like if you're gonna have like a ghost there, it's someone who has been there, even if they don't necessarily
Yeah.
live there. Like I know, like the example, there's always rumors that you can see the Black Dahlia Elizabeth Short roaming the hallways of the Cecil Hotel because
Right.
she was rumored to have been there. She didn't. I don't know if she necessarily stayed there long. She didn't stay there long for like extended period of time, but there was rumors that she was there. That makes
Right.
some sense that you might see her there. But if someone hasn't been there before, why all of a sudden would they just, like me, why would I show up at the Cecil Hotel? I've never been there, nor will I.
Right, exactly. It's like, yeah, that's on my places to avoid list. So, I mean, why am I going to go spend my afterlife there?
Yeah, I avoid it in life. I would like to continue avoiding it in death too. You will never see me set foot in the Cecil Hotel. There's not enough money in this world. I'm not going there.
Yeah, I mean, even from a practical standpoint, it's not a great area town. It's not a great building. I have no reason to take my fat self down there and check it out. Like, oh yeah, this is fun. No, it's not.
No, I have no desire. No desire. Yes, due to the location as well as the death in that place.
Yeah, it's not
far beyond.
It doesn't exactly have a happy history.
No, it doesn't. No, thank you.
Exactly. Thank you. Just a strong pass.
No. Mm-mm. So another place is called the Acadia University, which is in Wolfville, Nova Scotia. So the Acadia Ladies Seminary was constructed in 1878 and now stands as the oldest building on campus. The urban legend of the seminary's haunted status is an essential part of the university's on-campus lore. So allegedly, in the 1800s, a woman in the seminary discovered she was pregnant out of wedlock. During that time, unable to live with the shame and social ramifications of such pregnancy, the woman became extraordinarily desperate and hung herself to death in the back stairwell of the seminary. The seminary has since been converted into a residential building. Reports of a pale blonde lady who wanders the halls, closing open doors because she really hates an open door.
We can relate.
I mean, if a door is supposed to be closed, close the door.
Exactly.
So she began to emerge doing that. So if you're interested in seeing this really pale lady close your door for you, you can go there. I'm sorry for what you went through. I will not be going there. Yeah, I can close my own door. It's fine.
I mean, all things considered, she seems pretty okay. Just don't leave the door open.
Just leave the door open. Yeah, that's
Which,
fair.
if you're shutting the door behind yourself, it argues the point, will you see the ghost at all? You did what you were supposed to. She doesn't have to clean up after you. You're okay.
Yeah, just do what you need to do and you can avoid her.
Yeah, I could... You always see him provoke the spirit on these shows. I could see that. I left the door open. What you gonna do? Are you gonna come close the door? You close
have
the door, and that's
Bagans.
it.
You got Zach Bagans so leaving doors open, and he's just, yeah.
Good old
Good old Zach.
He's so entertaining. The man that's been possessed more times than any other human being throughout
Right?
history.
It's not
Every other
possible.
episode, I think.
It's not possible. It's not possible. Sorry.
But you know, the joke's on us because he is a multi-millionaire. He has one of the most successful event venues well, it's not an event venue, but it's one of the most successful tourist attractions in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
And you know, he went through all that. I made fun of him for years, and I'm sitting there looking at him now, and it's like,
he's richer than all of us.
Yeah.
Because people
He's not gonna be able to spend all the money he's made off this silliness.
I would go. There might be certain things, certain dolls that I'm not going to mention on the podcast. People who may know who I'm talking about. We're not going to mention her name. But I want to avoid her. Definitely. But I would go. I would go and give him money.
Yeah, I would.
So
absolutely. If I ever make it out to Vegas, it's one of my top places to go see, because everybody I've ever seen talk about it and that I've talked to has said it is an amazing attraction. It's 100% worth it. It's worth every penny. It's like, yeah, okay, I'll stop and go. Can't go see Siegfried and Roy anymore, so I got to go see something.
There you go. There you go. Next, Institut Doria, which is in Huntingdon, Quebec. So found in the community of Hinchinbrook, which is about a 7-minute drive away from the town of Huntingdon, the Institut Doria is one of Canada's most terrifying locations. So it's a hard pass for me just based on that alone. This long abandoned building was originally an orphanage that was converted into an asylum. So we have an orphanage and an asylum. Not going. No.
Yeah, this is not a happy place so far.
No. So allegedly in the 1940s and 50s, the provincial government of Quebec was responsible for a series of policies that converted church-owned orphanages into asylums to gain more federal church funding in a bad way. This was corrupt. This shouldn't have happened. But this resulted in many orphans being falsely labeled as mentally ill. Oh my gosh. So they could be kept at the new asylums without being moved to a separate orphanage. Ooh. Quebec, what are you doing? Sorry, Quebecois, what are you doing?
No kidding.
Oh my goodness. These orphans were then experimented on and often subjected to horrendous forms of torture such as beatings, rapes, lobotomies, electric shocks, and water torture. Even more horrifying, the church also reserved the right between 1942 and 1960 to sell the corpses of any unclaimed orphan children murdered on the premises to medical schools, profiting on their murder victims.
Jeez.
Oh my God. I didn't know any of this was happening at any point. This is horrible. Okay, so the asylum has been abandoned since the 1990s. It remains a monument of one of the most horrifying chapters in Quebec's history. That's my neighbor. The horrors these orphan children witnessed and experienced were unjustly cruel and senseless. However, there have been reports the merry-go-round, I guess there's a merry-go-round near this property or on the property, continuously spins by itself at night, even though there's no one there. There's no one there. So yeah, if you want to go see this place, it's a hard no for this person. But if you want to, you can go and see it. But again, as I've mentioned, anything having to deal with kids, I can't. And
Yeah.
the things these poor children went through, I can't. And I mean, lobotomies on a whole back then is horrific without this aspect of it, which I am planning to talk about in a future episode, probably next year sometime. But the ice, if you don't know about the ice pick lobotomies and all of that, definitely go ahead and do your research because it's horrific. But that's just, I hate to use the term tip of the iceberg when it comes to what these poor kids dealt with. And I am not going there to disturb their anger. They're probably angry.
I don't think it's one of those places. It's one of those places that I would probably visit just because it's the kind of person I am. But I usually visit things from a historical standpoint. As a historian, I go in to see these places and kind of experience the history of it and see firsthand where these things took place. But from the whole trend of ghost hunting and let's see if we can kick up the spirits or anything, that's not a place I would do that at. That's a lot of anger. And yeah, it just seems, to me, it seems somewhat disrespectful anyway.
Yeah.
And there's just also that thing, if I do drum up something, what are the chances? I think the chances are infinitely higher of it being incredibly pissed off with me. And I want nothing to do with that.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Because the thing is, it's like they were not left alone in life. So let's just leave them alone in death.
Well, that's exactly right.
Yeah. It is horrific. Absolutely horrific. But that is the last place to discuss here in good old Canada. Didn't go to BC or anything because there's no haunted places in BC, but
apparently not.
I guess
Bigfoot. I hear Bigfoot's in British Columbia. He chased all the ghosts out.
See, that's the thing, because that's right by like forest areas and all that. There are a lot more foresty areas in BC, so yeah, maybe that's exactly what happened. We don't have that here in Ontario.
Hey, he staked that claim. He's like, the forest is mine. I'm the only weird thing that can be out here. Go do your ghost stories elsewhere. Canada's a big place. Go do it there. Yeah. Not in BC. You're done.
Not in BC. No, we didn't touch any of the territories, Yukon or Northwest territories. We didn't touch you over there. None of it. We didn't touch you over there. But
that's right. No ghosts here.
Or Manitoba. There's nothing in Manitoba either. But
jeez.
We talked Nova Scotia, PEI. We didn't talk about anything in Newfoundland either, which is interesting because I can't remember if it's Newfoundland that has the victims of Titanic. I can't remember if it's Newfoundland or if it's Nova Scotia. Maybe Nova Scotia.
I think it's Nova Scotia.
So we did go to Nova Scotia, but we didn't talk about that. But I do wonder. Wherever they're buried. I do wonder.
And one thing I've noticed with ghost stories over the years is that there's a lot of ghost stories out there, and people have experiences with the unexplained, at least things that they can't explain, the very literal meaning of the statement, whether it's ghost or paranormal or just something oddball that they can't quite place. And but they don't talk about it. They talk, maybe mention to a friend, maybe a drinking buddy, something like that. But they don't come out in public and talk, I need a ghost hunter. I need Zach Baggins here to tell my story.
I don't need Zach here.
I know. I don't know. If he shared some of his cash with me, I'd be okay. He'd probably give me a crisp dollar bill or whatever. But still, I'll take it. I take what I can get. At any rate, there's a lot of people that have these things. I was talking to a gal that I work with, and I mentioned that I had some event coming up where I was talking about ghost stories, and she kind of made a couple jokes, and then she proceeded to tell me about this haunted house she grew up in. And it was like, wow, that was completely unexpected, and has never broached the subject again. It was just the right place, right time, and she felt comfortable enough to share it at that moment. And I have always wondered how many people have stories like that, but they just don't happen to share them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly it. Because I didn't, as far as I know, I have not grown up in a haunted house. I haven't experienced ghostly encounters or anything like that. I think I have been more of the person who's been like, I see someone who maybe looks like someone that has passed on. And I've had that a lot with my grandpa who died almost 4 years ago now. And from what Teresa Caputo has told me, that is my loved one, making themselves known. But I've seen more like that. But I know my grandma, after my great grandpa died, did think she saw him in her hallway of her home after he'd passed away. While she was brushing her teeth, she thought she saw him, and I was living in her home at that time, and she's like, I think I just saw him. And she'd call him Lester. She wouldn't call him, it was his name. She wouldn't call him Dad or anything. It was Lester. And I'm like, here? In the home that I now have to go to bed in? Like, I don't know about that.
Time to move.
Time for me to leave. But that's again, I think I'm scared of my great grandpa in life, so you made too much noise. He would tell you off. But anyway,
jeez.
Yeah, he wasn't a nice man in life, but he was my great grandpa. He was.
I hear you. I get it.
Yeah, but. This has been fun. This has been really fun talking about this. We are going to have you on again in a future episode. You're going to be on one of our Halloween episodes, and we're going to talk more about. I think you're going to be on the asylum episode. So I'm giving too much away. Don't you worry, guys. But you're going to be on one of our Halloween episodes, and I think definitely would love to have you on a future episode. Maybe talk more about your experiences with other places you've been to.
Absolutely, anytime.
Yeah, this was great. But do you have anything you'd like to plug?
Well, I'll take a chance to do a shameless plug. Why not? I have no pride. I have a podcast of my own. It's called Strange and Dreadful Things, where I talk about strange and dreadful things. We talk about ghosts and disasters and true crime and all kinds of pleasant things like that. The last thing I talked about was a mine disaster that took place in all things Central Illinois, which you would not expect to have a coal mining disaster, but we did. But you can find it wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Tune in. If you like this one, tune in and give us a listen.
Absolutely. So I will put links to the podcast and our show notes as well. And do you have any socials?
Yep, I'm on Facebook. It's Strange and Dreadful Things on Facebook and Instagram. I'm also on YouTube.
Perfect. So I will, like I said, we will put links to the podcast, and hopefully if anyone liked this, which I don't know how you couldn't, this was so much fun, you can definitely head over to Strange and Dreadful Things. I feel like I've heard of this podcast before too, but I'm new into the paranormal aspect. I kind of dipped my toe in a little bit into more paranormal type podcast, but I definitely feel like I've heard reviewers before too. And,
very cool.
But yeah, so that ends this episode. So let's bear through with this. Usually Mikel does this end part. I don't usually do the outro, but here we go. So You can find us on our website, which is solo.to/Next Take Podcast. We have our socials, which is Facebook and Instagram at Next Take Podcast, and TikTok and Twitter at Next Take Pod. You can also contact us with our email, which is mikeltanika@gmail.com. And there it is. I did it without him. But yeah, otherwise, this was great. And we look forward to having you on a future episode.
Awesome. It was a lot of fun. I can't wait to be back.
Yay.